Imagine you have just lost a parent. You're grieving, you're exhausted, and you probably just want to be home with your family, sharing memories and processing the loss.
Right, of course.
But instead of being at home, you are sitting on this hard wooden bench in a crowded probate courtroom. You're surrounded by lawyers, you're looking at a stack of filing fees, and you're just waiting for a judge you have never met to give you legal permission to access your own inheritance.
It is a completely jarring scenario for anyone to picture. I mean, we think of death as a deeply personal, private family event.
Yeah.
But the legal reality of passing on your assets is actually heavily bureaucratic and, frankly, surprisingly public.
And that image, that probate courtroom, is at the absolute center of our deep dive today. We're pulling from a massive, really comprehensive analysis suite. It's got psychological breakdowns, case studies, step-by-step guides.
It's a lot of material.
It is, and all of this material is anchored by a book called The Only Living Trust Book You'll Ever Need,
Which is written by Garrett Monroe, though the source notes actually tell us that's a pen name for an entire team of estate planning and financial strategy professionals.
Right. And our mission today is to shortcut your way to being fully informed about estate planning. We want to break down how to protect your legacy, how to spare your family from that courtroom nightmare we just talked about, and really debunk the myth that trusts are only for the ultra-wealthy.
Because that is a huge myth. But, before we get into the mechanics of how these legal structures actually function, we have to look at the psychology of why we avoid setting them up in the first place.
Why do we procrastinate on this so much?
Well, the source material includes a fascinating character psychology analysis. It points out that when it comes to estate planning, most of us fall into a profile they call the anxious avoider.
The anxious avoider.
Right. We suffer from this cognitive bias known as temporal discounting.
Okay, let's unpack this. Temporal discounting. That essentially means we heavily discount the value of a future benefit in favor of our present comfort.
Right. That is the absolute core of it. We are biologically wired to prioritize immediate threats or immediate rewards.
Like getting a paycheck today versus, a retirement fund in 30 years.
Exactly. Estate planning forces us to sit down and confront our own mortality, which obviously triggers a significant amount of psychological discomfort.
Oh, yeah. No one wants to think about their own death.
Right. And to make matters worse, pushing through that discomfort offers zero immediate tangible reward.
You don't get a prize at the end.
No. I mean, you endure a stressful legal process, you pay an attorney or buy software, and at the end of the day, you don't get a shiny new car or a remodeled kitchen. You just get a stack of paperwork.
So the brain just says, why bother doing this today? We tell ourselves we'll handle it next year, and that next year becomes this perpetual moving target.
Yeah, until the anxiety finally builds up enough, and then people usually take what feels like the path of least resistance.
Which is?
They draft a simple will.
Yes. That is the standard reflex. You write a will, you declare who gets the house and the savings, you sign it, stick it in a firebox, and you assume the problem is solved.
Right.
But according to the Monroe team, a simple will is actually a trap.
It functions as a trap because of one fundamental legal mechanic. A will inherently guarantees probate.
See, I think people assume a will allows you to bypass the courts entirely. Like, you wrote down your wishes so that courts don't need to get involved.
That is probably the most common misconception out there. A will is not a self-executing document.
Okay, so what is it then?
Think of a will simply as a letter to a probate judge. You are literally just telling the judge how you would prefer your assets to be divided.
But the judge still has to approve it.
Exactly. That letter still has to go through the official court-supervised process of probate to be validated, to ensure your creditors are paid, and to eventually actually distribute the assets. And the source material highlights that probate is fundamentally flawed for the average family in three major ways. The first is privacy. When your will enters probate, it becomes a matter of public record.
Meaning anyone can just walk into the county courthouse and request the file. They can read exactly what you owned, who you owed money to, the value of your accounts, and who is getting what.
Completely public. Financial predators, estranged family members, or just curious neighbors suddenly have full visibility into your family's financial footprint.
That is terrifying.
It is. The second major flaw is the timeline. The court system is severely backlogged. We're talking months and very frequently years to resolve even straightforward estates.
And during that time, your family can't touch the money.
Right. Your assets are largely frozen.
Then there is the third flaw, which is the sheer cost of the process. The text provides a breakdown of how probate fees are typically calculated.
It's not cheap.
Not at all. In many states, the court and attorney fees aren't just a flat rate. They are calculated as a statutory percentage of the estate's gross value. The math usually works out to roughly 4% of the first $100,000, 3% of the next $100,000, and 2% up to $1 million.
So if we run those numbers on an everyday scenario, the impact is severe. Let's say you have a $500,000 estate. In today's economy, that might just be a modest house, a standard retirement account, and maybe a basic life insurance payout.
Yeah, that's a very normal middle-class situation. And if you do that tiered percentage math on a $500,000 estate, you are looking at $15,000 or more just in mandatory legal fees.
That is $15,000 drained directly out of the inheritance.
Just to get legal permission to hand your kids what you already left them.
Which brings us directly to the primary solution offered in the text, which is the living trust. Unlike a will, a living trust is specifically designed to bypass that entire courtroom bottleneck.
Okay, I want to introduce a visual here to help make sense of how this actually bypasses the court. The way I like to think about a living trust is to picture a sturdy bucket.
A bucket, okay, I like that.
You hire a professional or use software to build this legal bucket. While you are alive and well, you take all your assets and you drop them into it. Your house goes in the bucket, your bank accounts go in, your investment portfolios.
Right, everything goes inside.
But the crucial part of this setup is that while you are alive, you are the one holding the handle of the bucket. You retain absolute total control over everything inside. You can reach in and take cash out to buy a boat, or you can drop a newly purchased asset in.
The bucket analogy perfectly illustrates the concept of legal continuity.
Because when you pass away, the bucket doesn't die.
Exactly.
You were just holding it. When you die, you simply pass the handle of the bucket to someone else that you chose ahead of time.
The assets inside never stopped being inside the bucket. They just have a new person carrying them.
Right. Because the entity of the trust survived you. There is no need for a judge, no need for a courtroom, and definitely no need to hand over $15,000 in probate fees.
For you listening, the relevance of this legal mechanic is profound. It ensures your financial matters remain totally private, occurring entirely outside the public record.
No neighbors snooping.
No snooping. And instead of your heirs waiting 18 months for a judge's signature just to pay off your funeral expenses or your remaining mortgage, they receive the assets in weeks.
So let's look a little closer at who is actually holding that handle, because the text outlines a very specific cast of characters required to build one of these trusts.
Right. There are three primary roles you need to know.
The grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary.
Exactly.
The grantor is the creator, the person building the bucket. The trustee is the manager, the person holding the handle. And the beneficiary is the receiver, the person who eventually gets to enjoy the stuff inside.
And in a standard revocable living trust, while you are alive and of sound mind, you occupy all three of those roles simultaneously.
Okay, I have to push back on that because it sounds a bit like circular logic.
Yeah.
If I am the grantor creating the rules, the trustee managing the assets, and the beneficiary enjoying the assets, isn't that just me talking to myself in a legal mirror? What is the point of this legal fiction if my day-to-day life doesn't change at all?
What's fascinating here is that the true power of the trust isn't activated by how you live on a normal Tuesday. The power activates only when you can no longer manage your own affairs.
Oh, okay.
The transition of the bucket's handle happens when you die, yes, but also, and this is a massive blind spot for most people, if you become incapacitated.
Incapacity planning. Because a simple will only activates upon your death.
Right.
So if you are in a coma, the will is utterly useless.
If you suffer a severe stroke or develop advanced dementia and you only have a will, your family cannot legally access your bank accounts to pay your medical bills or your mortgage.
You're locked out.
Completely locked out. They have to go to court and sue for a conservatorship or guardianship. That is another incredibly public, expensive, and stressful legal process where a judge decides who gets to manage your life.
But with a living trust, you name a successor trustee.
Exactly.
The character psychology pack actually refers to this person as the reluctant caretaker.
They use that term because the successor trustee is stepping into a heavy, often emotionally taxing responsibility. But legally speaking, the mechanism is seamless.
How so?
The moment you are medically determined to be incapacitated, that successor trustee quietly takes the handle of the bucket. They have immediate legal authority to pay your bills, manage your investments, and handle your medical expenses without needing a single court order.
That is huge. Now, the text also makes a massive distinction between two very different paths you can take when building this bucket. Revocable versus irrevocable trusts.
This is a divergence you absolutely must understand. An irrevocable trust is exactly what it sounds like. It's permanent.
No going back.
Right. Once you set it up and place assets inside, you generally cannot change the terms or take the assets back out. Because you permanently give up that control, the IRS and the legal system treat the irrevocable trust as a completely separate taxpayer.
Which has its benefits, right?
Oh, massive benefits for some. That separation offers immense protection from lawsuits and creditors, and it can significantly reduce estate taxes for individuals with massive, multi-million-dollar estates.
But your hands are completely tied. You can't just change your mind and pull your house out to sell it on a whim.
You surrender the flexibility. Which is why the Monroe team stresses that for the vast majority of everyday people, the revocable living trust is the exact right tool.
Because it's flexible.
It gives you the flexibility, you stay in total control. If you wake up tomorrow and decide you hate the trust, you can dissolve it entirely.
Okay, but the trade-off for keeping that control is that the revocable trust does not protect you from your own creditors while you are alive, and it provides zero income tax benefits. The IRS still views you and the revocable trust as the same entity.
Exactly. But the goal for most families isn't complex tax evasion or hiding assets from lawsuits. The goal is simply probate avoidance and protecting the family during incapacity.
Right.
And the revocable trust accomplishes both of those perfectly.
Let's follow the timeline here. You do the research, you buy the software or hire the attorney, you set up a revocable trust, and you sign this heavy stack of beautifully formatted paperwork.
You feel great.
You feel great, you assume you are fully protected. But the book hammers on one specific chapter, calling out the biggest, most tragic mistake in all of estate planning.
We are talking about the unfunded trust.
An unfunded trust. To adapt our earlier analogy, setting up the trust but failing to fund it is like spending $10,000 to build a high-security, impenetrable fortress to protect your family,
Right.
and then leaving your entire family camped out in tents in the field just outside the walls.
It makes no sense.
The protection exists, but you didn't put anything inside of it.
The text is adamant that funding your trust is not an automatic process. Creating the legal document is literally just step one. Step two is manually retitling your assets into the name of the trust.
So the actual mechanics of funding require real legwork.
It requires a significant amount of administrative labor. You have to go to the county clerk's office and file a brand new deed, legally transferring the ownership of your house from, say, John Doe to the John Doe Living Trust.
That sounds tedious.
It is, but it's required. You have to sit down with your bank manager and change the registration on your checking and savings accounts. You have to contact your brokerage firm and submit the forms to assign your investment accounts to the trust.
And if you own a small business?
You must legally reassign the ownership shares.
Wow. So if you get lazy and forget to file that new deed for the house,
then the house is outside the fortress. When you pass away, that house is subject to the exact same probate process you paid the attorney to help you avoid. The unfunded trust becomes a completely useless piece of paper.
the book does mention a safety net for this exact scenario, though, right? Called a pour-over will.
Yes, a pour-over will acts as a backup mechanism. It essentially tells the court, look, if I forgot to put any of my assets into my trust while I was alive, perhaps a new car I purchased a week before my death, please take those assets and pour them into my trust now.
But the critical flaw there is that those forgotten assets still have to suffer through the entire probate process in order to legally be poured into the trust.
Exactly.
A pour-over will catches your mistakes, but it doesn't save your family from the courtroom timeline or the fees.
Which just reinforces the central thesis.
Hmm.
Funding the trust immediately is an absolute non-negotiable step.
Okay, if all of this is so essential, it raises the question of why so many people assume living trusts are something only billionaires use.
Yeah, why the stigma?
The analysis pack points out that some estate planning professionals act as gatekeepers. They use dense jargon to make the process seem so complex and prohibitively expensive that average people just default back to the simple will.
We really need to dismantle the myth of cost here. There is this lingering assumption that setting up a trust requires a $10,000 retainer.
But the modern reality is much more accessible. The text shows that robust DIY software can generate a legally binding trust for roughly $100 to $300.
That's incredibly reasonable.
Right. And even if you choose to have an attorney prepare it for a typical family situation, the cost runs between $1,000 and $3,000. When you compare that upfront cost to the $15,000 probate fee we calculated earlier, setting up the trust literally pays for itself many times over.
The statistics provided in the source material make the baseline very clear. If you own real estate, if you have accumulated any significant retirement accounts, or especially if you have minor children, you are in the demographic that needs this protection.
I am so glad you brought up minor children because the book presents a major limitation of trusts regarding guardianship that we cannot gloss over.
No, we can't. A living trust, by its strict legal definition, only has the authority to manage property. It cannot manage people.
Okay, so it can't name guardians.
Exactly. A living trust cannot name legal guardians for your minor children. You still absolutely must have a will, specifically a conventional will, or that pour-over will we talked about, to declare who will raise your kids if you pass away.
So the holistic, complete plan is the living trust to hold the money and the house, and the pour-over will to name the guardians and catch any stray assets.
That is the complete architecture for a modern family.
Speaking of modern, we need to transition to Chapter 11 because this section shifts the entire paradigm. We aren't just passing down physical houses or antique clocks anymore. We are passing down digital assets.
Oh, this part is wild.
We are talking about cryptocurrency, cloud storage filled with family photos, and a decade of social media history.
And traditional estate law is incredibly far behind the technology curve on this front. Digital assets present a unique and, honestly, terrifying bottleneck for grieving families.
Right, because if you lose the physical key to a safety deposit box at a local bank, your successor trustee can bring a copy of the death certificate, hire a locksmith, and have the box drilled open.
Sure, it's a physical problem with a physical solution.
But if you lose the private key to a decentralized crypto wallet, there is no locksmith. The asset is permanently gone.
It ceases to be accessible to anyone. But the friction goes far beyond just lost passwords. The text highlights a major legal conflict regarding tech companies and their terms of service.
Let's lay out an example.
Okay, let's say your family urgently needs access to your primary email account to locate hidden financial records or digital bills. They go to a state probate court, they endure the delays, and they finally get a state judge to sign an order demanding the tech company grant access to the account.
A judge's order seems like it would be the ultimate authority.
You would assume so, but federal privacy laws, such as the Stored Communications Act, combined with the company's own terms of service, often create an impenetrable legal wall.
Really?
A state-level probate judge frequently does not have the jurisdictional authority to force a tech giant to violate federal privacy statutes. The company can simply refuse to open the account, and the judge is literally powerless to force them.
So what does this all mean? How do we actually fix this if the courts can't even help us?
You have to engineer a bypass around the court system entirely. The book's solution is to create a comprehensive digital inventory. You must explicitly appoint a tech-savvy digital executor within your estate planning documents, granting them specific legal consent to access your digital life.
Okay, that makes sense.
More importantly, you must secure your actual passwords in a reliable password manager or a physical safe deposit box that your successor trustee already has legal authorization to open. You have to leave them the keys rather than forcing them to try and break down a digital door that federal law protects.
That is a crucial update to standard estate planning. Now, the book also outlines a few other special situations where a trust goes from being highly recommended to absolutely mandatory. One example is owning real estate in multiple states.
Oh, yeah. If you live in New York, but you happen to own a small vacation cabin in Florida, and you die with only a simple will, your family's nightmare doubles.
They have to do it all twice.
Exactly. They have to go through the entire probate process in New York for your primary assets, and then hire a second set of lawyers to go through a separate ancillary probate in Florida just for the cabin. Placing both properties into a single living trust avoids both probates entirely.
The other mandatory situation involves families who are caring for special needs children.
This one is vital. If you have a dependent with a permanent physical or mental disability who relies on vital government assistance programs like Medicaid or supplemental security income, leaving them a direct lump sum of cash in a simple will is disastrous.
Because it throws off their income status.
Right. That sudden influx of money will instantly disqualify them from the government programs they rely on to survive.
The text mentions a specific structure called a special needs trust. How does that actually bypass the income limits for government assistance?
The legal mechanic relies on the fact that the disabled beneficiary never actually touches the cash. Instead of handing the beneficiary a $100,000 inheritance, the money goes into the special needs trust. The trustee acts as a gatekeeper and middleman. If the beneficiary needs a new motorized wheelchair or specialized therapy, the trustee pays the medical supplier directly from the trust.
I see.
Because the beneficiary never receives a direct check or holds the money in their own account, their personal income level technically never changes and their vital government benefits remain completely intact.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today, but what makes Monroe's team so effective is that they don't just leave you drowning in legal theory.
No, they give you a roadmap.
Right, the outro of the book provides a highly structured 30-day challenge to get this done.
It is a brilliant psychological tool. It directly combats the temporal discounting we discussed at the beginning by breaking a massive anxiety-inducing project into immediate, bite-sized weekly goals.
Week 1 is the asset inventory. You aren't making big legal choices yet, you just write down everything you own. Find your deeds, list your bank accounts, and map out your digital assets.
Simple enough.
Week 2 is decision-making. This is where you sit down and have the hard conversations. You choose your successor trustee, you name the guardians for your kids and your pour-over will, and you finalize your beneficiaries.
The heavy lifting, emotionally.
Yep. Then week 3 is drafting. You take the plunge, use the online service, or sit down with an attorney to generate the physical documents. And week 4 is funding. You do the legwork, you go to the bank, you file the new deeds, and you manually put your assets into the bucket.
By breaking it down, you bypass the avoidance reflex. In just 30 days, you transition from an anxious avoider to someone who has completely secured their family's future.
If we look at the core message behind all of these legal mechanics, it brings it all back to your fundamental values. Estate planning is not ultimately about tax strategy or mastering legal jargon.
It is fundamentally an act of love. By taking on this slight discomfort and doing the hard work now, you are deliberately choosing to spare your family from a bureaucratic, public, and expensive nightmare later. You are giving them the ultimate gift, which is just the space and the peace to grieve.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a brand new concept to ponder. Something that wasn't in the book, but builds directly on our discussion of the digital frontier.
Okay, let's hear it.
We talked about the mechanics of passing on your cryptocurrency and your private emails. But as we move incredibly fast into a world of personalized AI, what happens to the complex algorithms that have been trained for years on your daily behaviors?
Oh, wow.
What happens to your synthesized digital voice or the personal journals you fed into a private language model? Soon, estate planning might not just be about passing on your money. It might be about deciding who inherits your digital consciousness.
It's wild to think about.
Right. Will an AI clone of your personality be considered a standard asset in your living trust? Who gets the handle to that specific bucket? It is definitely something to think about.
It is a profound question that estate law will absolutely have to answer in the very near future.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into protecting your legacy. Take that 30-day challenge. Go build your bucket, do the work to fund it properly, and give yourself and your family that ultimate peace of mind. Until next time.